Welcome to The Network, a modern podcast version of the Negro Motorist Green Book. I've had the chance to interview some of my favorite people. Every episode is designed to help our community navigate the funky four corners of life. We are here to help the physical, mental, spiritual, and financial health of Black people living in and traveling through America. Subscribe to The Network. You never know. You might need it. All right, here we go. I got something. In the words of the great American poet, Tupac Shakur, all eyes on me. Y'all, listen, we're back. It's the podcast. I got a great guest. I got my family here today. Y'all know when I first started doing this podcast, one of the things I told you that I was definitely going to do was I was bringing my family on. So let me tell y'all a little bit about today's guest. Today's guest is a visual artist who was born and raised in New Orleans and spent a lot of time in Lafayette, Louisiana as well. He is a lifelong learner who finds joy in learning as much as he can to spot patterns and connect the dots between seemingly unrelated topics. As an artist and a human, Charles likes to explore the places of overlap that occur between science and spirituality. Ladies and gentlemen, those of you watching, those of you listening, please welcome today's guest, Charles Chaisson.
That's right.
Charles, how you doing, man?
I'm doing pretty well. It's been a good day, and I'm really happy to be here on the podcast with you doing this. So I'm excited.
Good, man. I'm glad to have you. It's so good to see your face. It's been years since we've seen each other,
Yeah.
but it's always good to see you. Of course, we follow each other, on social media, so that's how most of us keep up. Most of us who are family who don't see each other very often. All right, Charlie. Before we get started, um, I know people may wanna find you after we have this interview, so please share where people can find you.
I think the easiest way to find me would be via email or Instagram. Email is charleschasson@gmail.com. And pretty easily, my Instagram handle is Charles Chaisson as well.
Okay.
So you can find me there.
All right. And we're going to drop those down below because I know none of y'all know how to spell Chaisson. I know you can't
Yes.
say it, but I guarantee you that you can't spell it. All right, Charlie. Man, when we do the podcast, the first thing we like to do is give flowers. We don't wait until people leave this earthly plane to give them their flowers. We want to give it to them right now. So, who are you giving flowers to today?
I would like to give flowers to my Aunt Christy. I really admire her just because of how she stepped up to take care of my youngest sister. Um, Before my dad passed, she adopted my youngest sister, and she has taken care of her ever since he has passed. So, and she just kind of like that. She has another disabled son that she adopted years prior. So I think she just does so much, and she has taken on um, so much, and I just really appreciate her. Yeah.
Good. Flowers for you, Christy. Flowers for you. Charlie, thank you for sharing that. All right. So we dive right in. We're going 10 toes. Um, and I want you to share your why. But before we do that, um, the last sentence in your bio says, as an artist, Charles likes to explore the places of overlap that occur between science and spirituality. So the first question I want to ask you is, when did you become aware of that overlap between science and spirituality, and what about it really drew you into it?
Hmm. When did I first become aware of the overlap? I think it's actually been pretty recent, like in the past couple of years, that I've become aware of the overlap. I think the way I look at science and spirituality now is just like they are a circle, or like I feel like there are so many practices, different spiritual practices from different religious practices, like
Hmm.
meditation or things like that that people have done for thousands of years. And now the science is just kind of like catching up to it and be like, oh, wait, these things really do have physiological changes on the mind and the body.
Yes.
Um, and I think my personal journey with religion and spirituality has been a bit windy. I think I started out Roman Catholic because of my family, and then being a queer person and not really being accepted in that realm. I
Right.
think that kind of turned me off to it a little bit over time, and I went from Catholic to agnostic to atheist, right around back to spiritual. And I think I also, along that journey, I've also been interested in science. Like science is a passion of mine. I love learning about why the world is the way it is and why we are the way we are.
Hmm.
And I think specifically when it comes to like math and physics, like the more I learn about math and physics, I'm just like, oh, this is spiritual. Like it is describing the nature and the patterns that we see in everyday life, even if it's become much more complex. So yeah, that's kind of been my journey so far.
No, that Charlie, man, that is so neat because I can watch like these videos where they're doing like sound, and then they have the plates with like I'm gonna say salt. I don't know what it is, maybe salt or sand, and then they play these sounds, right? And then it forms, the vibration from the sound makes the sand or the salt or whatever it is form these perfect geometric shapes,
Yeah,
right? Um, my brother
so
and I were
cool.
talking one day about Fibonacci, about the Fibonacci sequence. And don't ask me to explain it to you because I can't, but it is some of the neatest things. But I do agree with you when you say that science and spirituality is like a circle. I really do believe it's 360 degrees and it's all connected.
Yeah,
And yes, I definitely agree that we are just catching up, right? At least I'm gonna say this: at least this version of humanity is finally catching up. You know what I'm
yeah.
saying, man? That's good, Charlie. That's good. All right, so your why. Tell us your why, Charlie. Why is it that Charlie does what he does? What's your why?
I think my inclination to learn as much as I can about as many topics as I can is to understand more, just to understand reality better so that I can be intentional about how I show up in reality. Um, I particularly think that perspective is of interest to me, individual perspective uh, in conjunction with collective perspective and how that presents itself as culture, you know, um, and
Oh,
how
wait,
relationship dynamics.
say that again. That was because I need to write that down. Individual perspective.
Individual perspective versus kind of like group perspective and how that relates to culture, like the
Wow.
building of culture and the passing along of culture through time. And culture can be good or bad or neutral. Like, you can have a culture of singing and dancing, and those are like uplifting, expansive things. Or you can have a culture of like, you know, talking bad about people or like
Hmm.
fighting people just because you feel disrespected or something like that. Like those things, like they become an ecosystem, like a psychological ecosystem, and those things are passed
Yeah.
down throughout
Yeah.
time if we don't have experiences with other people. Um, and I think another element of learning as much as I can is I think that right now we're kind of in a turning point, humanity and like us living in this ecosystem, the earth that we rely upon, and trees also rely upon us. And like I think we're all so much more connected than we think, or that we've been led to believe.
Hmm.
And I think one of my purposes here is to collaborate with others to build, regenerative systems of support. Like that's something that I'm really interested in. How do we take, how do we get our needs from the earth and also replant that? How do we put energy back into the earth so that it's like sustainable instead of just kind
Yes.
of like extracting continuously?
Yeah. So
And
that's as a social studies teacher, that's that sustainable development
yeah,
that we talk about constantly. Man, you want to I'm going to rewind like 30 seconds.
okay,
So because you wowed me, when you painted that picture of culture, right? Individual versus group perspectives, and then how it presents as culture. And that can be a good and a bad thing if it can be a bad thing if we don't interact with other groups of people, right?
yeah,
That can show us something different. Man, so what you pointed out was, and this is what I wrote in my notes, is that's why we need diversity. Especially if we get stuck in a cycle of destructive cultural norms,
yeah,
right? So we need diversity. We need um other thought patterns, or
yeah,
we need to be exposed to people who have had different experiences, and have different ways of thinking about things. Man, Charles, that man, I'm first of all, I'm blown away. So before we started recording,
yeah,
we were talking, and I pointed out, I was just like, man, the emotional intelligence, you know, that you had in your 20s, to just to recognize some of the things that you recognize. And this is an example of that. This
yeah.
is why we need diversity. So let me ask this question. If you can answer it, or if you have some insight or perspective on this, why, in your opinion, are people against diversity? Why is diversity looked at in some circles like the boogeyman?
Because difference is always scary. Or I won't say always. Difference is usually scary because I think as a species, we tend to project our worst fears and like internalize kind of like shame onto people. Um, and so a lot of the times we'll see someone different and maybe we'll view them in ways that they don't view themselves. Or that's not even like aligned with reality. Like I think most of us have more in common than we have differences. Like, we want to be happy, we want to be loved, we want to be validated, we want to eat, we want shelter, we want community, we want to experience joy with people. Um, and I think when we view people as different or other, it's easy to forget how much we have in common because othering people allows you to be like, oh, that's not a human like me. That's
Hmm.
something else.
Hmm.
So I think that is a big part of it, and I also think when people are stuck in their ways, um, people don't want to change. Like it's hard to get people to change. Like most times change comes from within. Like people have to want to change to actually
Right.
change.
Right.
um, and I wanted to mention something about perspective that I think you'll appreciate. um, there was this there was a show, I forget what it was called, but they did an experiment called something, it was an experiment and it was exploring something called wisdom of the crowd.
Hmm.
So what they did is they had this gumball machine that had like thousands of gumballs, and they selected 100 people and they asked each of them to give their best guess at how many gumballs are in this machine. So like individually their answers were wildly inaccurate, like it was way off.
Yeah.
But the really cool part about it was that if you added up all of their answers and divided it by the amount of people that they asked, which was 100, the answer was so close to the actual amount of gumballs. And what that says
Wow.
to me is that individually, we each have a unique perspective, and we each have a little bit of noise, a little bit of like a dents in our perspective that kind of warps what we see. And when we average our perspectives, it's closer, we get a closer view at reality. And that's, it kind of reminds me of what you were saying about like why we need different perspectives. Um, and it's something I've been trying to practice recently. Like, I don't always want to be around people that agree with me, because then I'm just in an echo chamber. Like, I want to, if I have a bias, I want someone to point it out, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I always I'm similar, right? Because there's a saying that if you're the smartest person in the room, it's time to find a new room, right? And I never want to be the smartest person in the room because I'm always looking to learn. You know, I'm always looking to be taught something, to learn a new perspective, to ponder on something that I never would have considered without getting this new perspective. So that's good, man. That is good. That I'm gonna be chewing on that for a minute. Everybody's numbers were way off, but when they took the average, it was really, really close. That's that's rich. That's rich.
Your
So
wisdom of the crowd.
man, so I talk about this a little bit. Can you talk a little bit more about these I can't read, regenerative systems of support? What does that look like? um, and how can more people be actively involved in helping to either build those systems or become part of those systems?
I think when I think about regenerative systems of report, of I can't talk either apparently today.
Must be a
Support.
Louisiana thing.
Um, yeah.
Dang it, you
Um,
Louisiana public school systems.
um, I think about just the way we farm. Like, the way we farm now is incompatible with, you know, soil health. You know, like the way we farm, if it's like monoculture, we're farming thousands of acres of one thing, as opposed to what naturally happens, where it's, like different plants together existing side by side. And historically, like back in the day when we were nomads and hunter gatherers, we would just go in and get what we need and come back and share. um, so I think finding some kind of balance there, where we kind of like build, I think it would have to be more local too. Like, I think we'd have to get a lot more of our resources locally. I think a lot about um, building those kinds of food systems in our yards instead of having like grass lawns and stuff like that. um, I think about how little access to fresh foods that people who are lower income have, and how that impacts health and how that impacts health care. So building things like, food forests, like that should be, there should be places in each city where people are allowed to just grab free food. Like, that should be a city funded thing. um, I think about healthcare, and a lot of my cousins and I talk a lot about how we would build a healthcare system, and kind of like getting at the root cause of issues instead of treating the symptoms. Like, and even using like innovative systems, because there's a lot of technology that they're finding out, that's free, most times, when it comes to, breath work and how that affects the body, how that affects the mind. There's like ultra infrared light therapy, um, sound therapy, vibrational therapy, that's really interesting to me in terms of like, healing and regenerating the body, instead of just kind of like, oh, you have this symptom, let me give you this medicine that has a bunch of other side effects that you now have to take more medicine for.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so I really wish, instead of living in like such an extractive society, we focused on how do we find balance, how do we find homeostasis, how do we um, build systems that help us kind of like keep things in balance and give back what we're taking.
That's good. So the one of the first things you said just now was, so we'll have thousands and thousands of acres of one thing, when that's not how it was. Man, the first thing I thought about was like, man, that's that balance between humans and our ecosystems. So just like we need diversity,
Yeah.
the soil also needs that diversity.
Mm.
That's good. That's good. You're really on to something. So, Charlie, you're an artist. Um, does any of your art, or has any of your art or pieces, um, no, here's the question. Do we see any of this passion for these regenerative, those things, those systems of support? Do we see in, does any of this come through in your art?
I would say that I'm building a body of work now that focuses on systems like that.
Okay.
I've worked for about a decade as a freelance illustrator, and as an illustrator, it's really fulfilling to like help other people envision and create, their idea, turn that
Hmm.
into something. Um, but I will say, as an artist, there was so many years where I just like didn't do my own personal work. I didn't do work that was just for me, and the work I'm doing now, it just feels so fulfilling because I'm just like, oh, I can. This is just about my message, and now I have a chance to kind of incorporate a lot of the things that I actually care about. Because, like, if I'm not putting the things that I care about into my art, like, I don't know, what am I doing? You know?
Right. Right. Okay. That's good. That's good. And so Charlie shared some of his artwork with me, and then I'll be, if it's okay with you, can I share those down at the bottom? Okay, so I'll
Of
share
course,
some of his artwork down at the bottom. Y'all, it's good. It's really, really good. Um, it's
thank
really
you.
good. Very, very talented artist. So let me ask you this while we're talking about art. How old were you when you knew you wanted to be an artist, or when you figured out, hey, I'm pretty good with with the sketch pad or with paint and canvas? When'd you figure it out?
Um, I think I was really young because, and I was just telling the story recently to a friend. A lot of my mom's side, like my immediate family on my mom's side, are creative. Like
Okay.
my mom, when I was growing up or when I was a baby, she had this drawing of flowers and insects and like butterflies and bees and stuff that she had drawn all over her closet. And every day I would look at that and just like be enamored by how like cool and beautiful it was. So that was an inspiration. My grandmother, she would like dress her house up like really intensely for Halloween, and she would like make these like really creepy like vampire like zombie dolls with like moss, and I was just like, oh shit, that's terrifying, but it's really cool. And we would dress up, all of us would dress up. And my godmother, she was an opera singer and a costume designer, so I always had access to that creativity. And even my dad, like my dad, what's funny is that my dad and my mom have very similar handwriting, and people always comment about how nice it is. And I think he could draw a bit too. And funnily enough, I have a similar handwriting as both of them. So I
Mm.
think I was always around creative people who were encouraging me to be creative. So I think I entered like a contest when I was like 3 and got like second or third place, and
Oh
I was just
wow.
always trying after that. You know,
Wow. Wow. That's awesome. Man, you are incredibly talented, because
thanks,
like,
guys.
I mean, yeah. I love it. Okay, so listen, y'all. Let's do this real quick. Let's do this real quick. So before we go on to the next segment, I need you to like, subscribe, sign up for notifications if you're watching on YouTube. If you are listening by podcast, especially if you're listening on Apple, I need you to go to iTunes, give us that 5-star rating, like, share, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. All right, Charlie, we're getting ready to move into the exit ticket. Are you ready for this?
Yes.
All right. So this exit ticket, it used to be called the lightning round. Sometimes it's lightning, sometimes it's not so much lightning. But the exit ticket is 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So the first thing is the Furious Five. Okay. So I'm going to ask you five random, kind of lightning roundish type questions. And then we go from there. Now, I got
Sure.
some good questions here today. So if we go beyond five, just know that we're flexible. All right.
I'm here for it.
All right, here we go. So this first question I ask every guest, we get some great answers. If you could have a superpower, any superpower, what would it be and why?
I would like to be able to fly because in my dreams, I do a lot of I have a lot of lucid dreams, and I'm always like paying a lot of attention to my dreams. But
Do you dream in color?
yes,
Oh wow.
yeah. But I there's a recurring dream where I know how to fly, and it's really intriguing because it always feels like something that I've done a million times before, and I'm just like coming back to it. I'm just like, oh, I remember how to do this, and it doesn't feel like flapping my wings. It feels more like I'm on a planet with like low gravity, and I'm just like dancing on the wind, just like
Mm,
kind of like gliding. And
yeah.
that's I'm just like, man, it'd be so cool to do that in real life, you know.
Okay. Okay. That's a good answer. All right, check this out. Who is your least favorite celebrity?
Oh God. Um, I don't know. I don't know if Donald Trump.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Here we go. What would you be doing with your life if money was not a problem?
Oh God. I would be laying in a forest, eating berries, taking dips in a spring, and painting and like singing and dancing with my community.
Okay. Okay. All right. Check this out. This is a good one. What is the most dangerous animal you could beat in a fight to the death?
That I could beat.
Yes.
I just started taking boxing classes, so I think I feel I'm feeling a little bit more stronger than usual.
Okay.
Maybe like a wolf.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say I was thinking bear, but I was just like, no, it's gonna tear me apart. I'm just gonna run.
That yeah. Yeah. Hey, sometimes boxers run too. All right.
Yes, yeah. You
All
gotta
right.
know when to run and know when to fight.
Got it. That's fight or flight, baby. Gotta know.
Yeah.
Gotta know. All right. Last question. I don't know if this is five or six. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't even know. A couple of them I took out, but here we go. All right, Charlie. Last question in the Furious Five. What advice would you give to your younger self?
It is okay to fail because failure is a part of succeeding and success.
Oh, that's
Um,
good.
don't beat yourself up so much mentally, and don't judge yourself so much mentally. I think it's easy to be self-critical. It is more rewarding to get out of the habit of being so critical, so self-critical.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. That was the Furious Five. Now, the next place we're going to is the Funky Four. All right. In the Funky Four, you are going to give us the best advice that you have received in the following areas: physically, mentally, spiritually, and then lastly, financially. So, what do you have for the Funky Four? Let's start with physically. What is the best physical advice that you have received?
I would say move it or lose it. I think as a society we overvalue comfort. I
Yes.
think our reliance on comfort can is like an element of our downfall at times. There are good stresses that help us to live longer, healthier lives. Like exercise is a really good stressor, and it's really good for your brain as well as your body. Like circulation, it helps to like move nutrients through your body, through your blood. So I would say move it or lose it for sure.
Y'all got that, people? Move it or lose it. All right, that's physically. What do you have for mentally? Best advice you've received mentally.
Start meditating. Um, I remember, I think it was 2018 that my dad passed away, and I started therapy for the first time in my life in 2019. And my therapist was like, start meditating, even if it's only 3 minutes a day. And it's changed my life. Like, I used to get really bad panic attacks, and like I had little bouts of depression here and there. But meditation has been proven scientifically to help with both of those things. And the way I think it does that is like, anxiety is about overthinking or like worrying about what could happen, not what's happening right now.
Hmm.
So meditation is really about being present, being right here, not thinking about what's going to happen in the future. Um, and yeah, it's really cool. Like it can help stave off diseases like dementia or Alzheimer's because of how it literally builds protein in the brain. So,
That's good. That's good. Listen, this is not planned, but when I record, and the timing that I get guests on the show, the timing is phenomenal because the
mm,
guest that I recorded with last week, so y'all's episodes are going to be back to back, and some of the same themes are here. So this is good stuff. All right. So that was physically, mentally. Best advice you've received spiritually.
um, I would say learn how to feel joy for other people experiencing joy, even if it doesn't involve ourselves. Um, I would also say to pay kindness forward. Kindness is free, and there's so much negativity in the world that we really need to like be more gentle and more kind with one another. Um, and I also think like loving ourselves better. And I think that goes back to the self-critical, kind of like self-judgmental comments I was making.
Hmm.
Um, I think we only have the capacity to love others as much as we have learned to love ourselves. And I think that, you know, that requires us to, there's this great exercise, and it's a meditation. It's like you close your eyes and you think about someone you love who's like really easy to love. It could be your mother, your sister, or like a cousin, brother, etc. And you think about wishing them well. Sometimes I think about them smiling. And what I feel is like it feels like my brain is smiling and my heart, my chest is expanding.
Yeah.
And I direct that to myself after I've wished them well. Like you have to think it's called loving kindness meditation. Um, it's like wish them well, you wish that they succeed in life.
Hmm.
Um, you wish that they are free from pain, and then you direct that to yourself in the end you know
That's good. That's good. All right. Physically, mentally, spiritually. The last of the funky four. Financially, what is the best financial advice that you have ever received?
I would say that it's try to work for yourself. I think time is such a valuable component of living, and so much of our time is spent making money for others and not making money for ourselves and our community. I also think there's this Japanese concept called ikigai, and it encourages us to figure out, how to align our vocation with what we're passionate about, what we're good at. It's just like these three circles a couple of circles. Don't quote me on three circles, but it's a couple of circles that overlap,
Hmm.
and it helps you to figure out how to align the work that we do with you know, those elements, those facets.
Ikigai.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. All right, that was the funky four. Physically, mentally, spiritually, and financially. Now that takes us to the next thing, which are three recommendations. So, Charlie, one book,
Mm.
one song, and one podcast that has been life changing for you that you recommend for our listeners and watchers.
I'm reading a book called Breath by James Nestor, and that has been life changing. It really showed me how much of our health is truly in our hands, and how there are so many like free practices like breathing, like specifically breathing through our nostrils as opposed to our mouth, that really have like deep and profound changes on our body. Um, like, yeah, it's really cool. And what I like about this book is that they reference both scientific studies and ancient spiritual texts. So yeah, I think that would be the book that I recommend.
Okay. Breathe by James Nestor. Okay. All right. Song. What you have? One song that you recommend for us.
Janelle Monáe, Float. It's really hard for me to pick a specific song because
Mhm.
of how eclectic my music tastes are. But Janelle Monáe's Float, like, I feel like that's giving me the energy I need for the rest of 2023. You know.
Okay. And what one of the things that I'm doing is I'm building an Apple playlist from all of the recommended songs and music from my guests. So I'm actually going back through all my episodes and compiling songs, and I'm making an Apple playlist. So
That's
Float,
awesome.
Float by Janelle Monáe. I'm adding that as we speak. All right, one
Nice.
podcast, Charlie. One podcast.
I would say Hidden Brain. It has really helped me to see why, or understand more of why people do the things that we do, and to expand the way I see the world. It's really cool.
Okay. I think is that an NPR podcast?
It might
Okay.
be
I think I've actually listened to a few episodes of that podcast. Okay.
awesome.
So that was the book was Breath by James Nestor, the song Float by Janelle Monáe, and the podcast Hidden Brain. Charlie, thank you for sharing those. All right, that's
You're
the
welcome.
5 and the 4 and the 3. So now we're down to the 2, and that brings us to do. So two things you plan to get accomplished in the next 90 days, 6 months, a year, whatever it is. But what are your two things, Charlie?
My first thing would be to complete the body of abstract work that I've been creating the past couple of years and just been doing it in the background. But I want to have a show uh, at some point towards the end of the year. And the second thing I would say is continue learning music theory and collaborate with others to make music.
Okay.
Yeah.
What teach me what is music theory? I didn't
Oh,
know
it's just
I didn't know
learning.
music had a theory.
Yeah, it's just learning how to read music and like the
Ah,
different, notes and octaves. Um, learning the difference between a C and a D, or an
okay.
E or a F sharp or something like that. Yeah.
So let me ask this because I don't know. I played percussion like the two and
Okay.
a half years I was in band. So what is the difference between is it just the tones or what's the difference between a sharp and a flat, for example?
Oh, you're putting me on the spot, and I haven't studied recently.
Okay. Or what's the
uh,
difference between a C and
sh-
then E?
okay, so a C is lower and deeper than an E. And what's funny is that I learned, I was drawing circles and I was reading this book about geometry, and I learned that an octave is a smaller version of a specific circle. And that also relates to how wind passes through instruments. Like, for the note to go higher, the circle has to be smaller. Yeah.
Mm, okay. Okay. Learn something new today. Learn something new today. Okay, Charlie, that was the 5, the 4, the 3, and the 2, which brings us down to the 1. So, this is one piece of unsolicited advice that you would like to share. This segment used to be called You Didn't Ask because nobody asked for this one piece of advice, but we are going to give it to you anyway. So, Charlie, what do you have for one piece of unsolicited advice?
Hmm. I would say, if someone isn't your cup of tea, to and they're not doing anything negative to you or anyone else, to just walk right by them, and go find another cup of tea with your community in it. You know, I think so often we are focused on differences and like judging people because they don't have the same inclinations to do the things that we do. Um, but really, it's just like we can exist alongside each other and have different preferences. You know.
Yeah, that's it. That's good, Charlie. That's good. All right, everybody. Once again, if you are listening to the audio podcast, or if you are watching on YouTube or Spotify, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Okay. Make sure you go to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. Then tell a friend to tell a friend. Or maybe you can, when y'all are riding in the car, you can be like, oh, I need y'all to check out this podcast I've been listening to. You can do that too as well. All right. So listen, you can follow the network with Michael Prejean on Instagram and Facebook. We are the_network_podcast on Instagram, the network with Michael Prejean on Facebook. Make sure that you check out the show notes for Charlie's recommendations, recommended reads, his music, his podcast. Charlie, tell us one more time where we can find you.
Instagram, you can find me at Charles Chaisson, and email, you can find me at charleschesson@gmail.com.
All right, everybody, this is the network. Every episode is designed to help the physical, mental, spiritual, and financial health of Black people living in and traveling through America. Signing off for Charlie Chaisson. My name is Michael Prejean. I thank y'all so much for tuning in today. Until the next time, I need y'all to make love the culture. Charlie, thank you so much for your time. Peace.
Thank you.